Before you see and say anything, listen.
Hello, please. Hello, please, I need help. Please, I need help.
911, what is the address to your emergency? Hello?
That is the sound of a man watching the life he claimed to love slip away after the trigger he pulled tore it out of her. So tell me, why was the man begging for help the same man police led away in handcuffs for first-degree murder? And why did her father care more about a wig on her body than the wound in her chest? And how did one gunshot turn into a national debate over gender, over love, over hate, and over the life of a young woman who wanted nothing but joy? This is the truth behind Girlalala murder case. The murder that didn't just take a life, it exposed a nation. Every face you'll see here once had dreams, laughter, and people who loved them. But somewhere along the way, their stories went silent. I'm Detective Daniel, and here we give those stories a voice again. Before we begin, take a moment, tell me your name and where you're watching from.
I don't understand what I did to make you hate me. I don't hate you. Well, I envy you.
Before the gunshot, before the argument that ended her life, she was joy. Pure, unapologetic joy. She danced into people's phones. She painted her world with color. She made wigs look like crowns. And every laugh felt like it came from a place deeper than happiness, like she was fighting for it. To her fans, she wasn't just a creator. She was a burst of light in a world that can be cruel to girls like her. But every light casts a shadow, and behind her brightest moments, that shadow was growing. She showed the world the glitter, the jokes, the confidence, but she never showed the fear. She never showed the moments when love felt like walking barefoot through broken glass, never knowing which step would cut the deepest. And then, there was this, a video where she calls the toxicity cute, where danger plays like a punchline, where pain hides behind a smile.
My face changed so fast. I was like, oh Lord, then mind you, I hate this hotel because behind the bathroom door wasn't even locked. So he walked in and next thing that was like, boom, throw out down, trust me, boom, boom, boom. Because as y'all can see in the last video, my face, like, I ain't have to cut my eye, but bitch, we too down, like.
To her fans, it looked harmless. It looked like a joke. But to investigators, and to anyone who has ever survived a violent partner, it looked like the warning she never got the chance to escape. Look closer. Behind the giggles, there's exhaustion. Behind the glam, there's a girl trying to hold herself together. Behind the sparkle, there's a heart carrying fear so heavy, even her followers mistook it for confidence. People saw her glow, but no one saw the storm behind the glow. And that storm was getting ready to break. Because while the world celebrated her rise, her private life was cracking. Her relationship was shifting from passion to control, from affection to surveillance, from love to danger. She was climbing higher and higher on social media, while falling deeper and deeper into a reality she couldn't post, couldn't explain, couldn't escape. And the people who loved her online never saw the moment the mask slipped. Because before she became a headline, before her father made his ultimatum, before the police cuffed the man she trusted, she was a young woman fighting a battle she shouldn't have been fighting alone. And on the night she died, that shadow she kept hidden finally caught up with her. On the night she died, the sky over Lauderdale Lakes was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that makes your skin crawl, because you can feel something awful coming before anyone hears it. It began with voices. Sharp, tight, strained. Neighbors would later tell investigators they heard an argument, a kind of argument you don't forget, because it sounds like someone is trying to outrun their own fear. Some said it sounded like pleading, others said it sounded like a warning. One neighbor said it sounded like a heartbreaking, in real time, and then a scream, not a scream for attention, a scream for survival, a scream that vanishes the moment the gun goes off. In that instant, the street fell silent, a silence so heavy, witnesses said it felt like the air itself stopped moving. That door was left half open, a quiet witness to a nightmare. Inside, her body slumped, motionless, caught between the seat and the final moment of her life. And then came the call. She's not breathing. Please, please don't die on me. The call was desperate, But desperation doesn't always mean innocence. Deputies rushed to the scene. They found the wig on the pavement. They found her phone shattered in the dirt. They found him shaking, hands on his head, eyes wild. But what they didn't find was a story that made sense. The angle of her body didn't match his explanation. The placement of the gun didn't match his panic. The timeline didn't match his tears. Investigators took one look at the scene and realized the truth wasn't in his voice. It was in the evidence. He cried, he begged, he pleaded into that phone like a man drowning in guilt. But the evidence, the cold, silent evidence, told a different story altogether. He said the gun just went off. He said he didn't mean to hurt her. He said he tried to save her. But then, why did detectives say his story collapsed in minutes? Because the truth inside that car wasn't an accident, and it wasn't love. It was a moment of violence that no whisper, no cry, no late-night phone call could ever undo. Word of her death moved faster than the ambulance that carried her away. Before the sun rose the next morning, the world already knew, and the world cried. On TikTok, on Instagram, on every corner of the internet, her fans wept. Women she had never met sobbed into their phones as if they'd lost a daughter. Teenagers who copied her makeup looks wrote goodbye messages, and thousands replayed her last videos, trying to understand how a girl so full of life could be gone in a single night. Her friends arrived at the hospital before the police even released her name. Some were screaming, some were shaking, some collapsed in the parking lot when doctors confirmed what the sirens had already told them, that she never made it. And then the vigils began. Candlelight circles formed in the rain, candles melting faster than people could relight them, wax running down like tears, strangers hugging strangers, fans kneeling on the pavement, whispering her name, as if she might somehow hear them. But grief has a way of ripping things open, and in the middle of all that pain, a new wound appeared. Her father went live on social media. He looked straight into the camera and said a sentence that would divide the nation. "I will not go to that funeral if there's a wig on my child." In a moment of heartbreak, the world watched a family fracture in public. To some, he was a grieving father clinging to the child he believed he raised. To others, he was the living proof of the same rejection she fought against her whole life. And suddenly, the story wasn't just about a murder. It became a battle over identity, over respect, over who gets to define a person after they're gone. The LGBTQ+ community stepped forward, loud, angry, united. They demanded justice, demanded truth, demanded the world say her name with dignity. Her death didn't just break hearts, it broke open a national conversation about identity, about acceptance, and the price of silence. But while the world argued online, something else was happening. Quietly, behind closed doors, detectives were uncovering something chilling, and what they found would tear open the case all over again. When the shouting stopped and the sirens faded, the investigation began. And in the quiet after the chaos, the evidence began to speak louder than the 911 call ever did. Deputies switched on their body cams the moment they stepped out of their cars. Those cameras captured everything, every movement, every tremble, every contradiction. In the footage, you see him pacing, hands shaking, voice cracking. But then something strange happens. As officers get closer, his panic fades. He becomes calm, too calm, the kind of calm detectives don't ignore. They placed him in cuffs and took him in for questioning. The first silent witness was the gun itself. Its residue clung to his hands like truth, refusing to be washed away. Tests confirmed he fired it. There was no mystery, no doubt, no second set of prints. The next witness was the bullet's path. The shot entered at an angle that didn't match his story. He said she pulled the gun. He said he tried to grab it. He said it went off by accident. But the angle of the bullet told a different truth, a truth that pointed directly at him. Detectives reconstructed the timeline minute by minute, where he said he was, where she was sitting, how it happened, when it happened. And then the contradictions began. He changed his story, once, then again, then again. His timeline bent, but the evidence didn't. His excuses twisted, but the gun didn't. His tears blurred the story, but the facts stayed razor sharp. The gun didn't lie. The evidence didn't bend, and the timeline collapsed under its own weight. In the interview room, the calmness returned. No shaking, no panic. Just a man sitting across from detectives trying to explain a bullet that wouldn't agree with him. He said he loved her. He said he tried to save her. He said he didn't understand how it happened. But love doesn't erase gun residue, and confusion doesn't change trajectory. And no amount of crying into a 911 call can rewrite the final seconds inside that car. But just when detectives thought they understood the timeline, something unexpected surfaced. Her phone, cracked, blood-specked, and still holding secrets she never got to share. A secret in her phone changed everything. When detectives unlocked her phone, they stepped into a world she never showed the public. A world that looked nothing like the bright videos she posted online. A world she kept hidden, even from the people who loved her. Her social media was filled with color, beauty, laughter, wigs that turned her into art, smiles that felt so real, no one ever questioned what lived behind them. But buried behind those posts were messages that told another story, a quieter story, a fearful story. There were messages where she sounded unsure, messages where she sounded tired, messages where she sounded like someone trying to figure out how to leave a situation she no longer felt safe in. There were hints of jealousy, moments where he seemed suspicious of her friends, moments where he questioned her every move, moments where love stopped sounding like love and started sounding like control. And as detectives scrolled deeper, they saw something even harder to ignore. Her messages changed tone. The girl who used to joke about everything stopped joking. The girl who filled her chats with emojis stopped using them. The girl who always said she was fine started saying less and less at all. Her world was getting smaller. Her fear was getting louder. And she was trying to figure out how to pull herself out of a relationship that had stopped feeling like home. What she posted online was joy. What she kept private was terror. And as detectives pieced these messages together, a heartbreaking picture began to form. Control, argument, fear, jealousy, a pattern emerging that no one recognized soon enough. And when detectives connected the dots, the motive became painfully clear. In every tragedy like this, there is a moment when investigators turn their attention from the victim to the person standing closest to her. To the outside world, he was the man she chose, the man she laughed with on camera, the man she held onto, even when her hands were shaking. But to the people who watched them up close, the story sounded different. Friends described moments that made them uneasy. Not violent moments, but moments where his presence changed her energy. Moments where her laughter dimmed. Moments where she looked over her shoulder before she answered a question. Neighbors remembered hearing arguments. Not every night, not constant, but the kind of arguments that stick in your memory, because the fear inside them is impossible to ignore. Detectives studying the messages on her phone noticed a pattern forming around him, a pattern of checking in, questioning, pressuring, tension building in ways that made her voice shrink as the days moved closer to the night she died. Jealousy didn't appear in one big moment. It appeared in little cracks, little comments, little shifts in tone, until the girl who once lit up every room began dimming her own light to avoid setting him off. On the day she died, witnesses noticed something different. He was quieter, more intense. People saw a tension around him that didn't match the calm of the night. And as the hours slipped by, that tension followed them, all the way into the car, where everything would unravel. She believed she could change him. She believed the love she gave could soften whatever storm he carried inside. She believed her loyalty could fix what kept breaking. Instead, she became another name in America's growing list of intimate partner tragedies. But was this fate or failure? Was this the inevitable ending of a relationship built on fear, or the result of warning signs that went unanswered for too long? And if someone had stepped in sooner, would she still be alive? When the gunshot faded, when the case files stacked up, and when the world demanded answers, the theories began, and each one carried its own storm. To investigators, the picture was painfully clear. A heated argument, a sudden escalation, a shot fired at close range, a man whose story shifted every time they pressed for details. To them, this was not confusion. It was not an accident. It was a moment where emotion boiled over into irreversible violence. But the community saw something deeper. They saw a young woman who had been shrinking for months, a slow unraveling that didn't start in a car, but long before that night. Many believed this was the final chapter of a relationship marked by fear. She tried to hide behind jokes and filters. Experts studying the case recognized the pattern instantly. They spoke of the cycle, the tension, the explosion, the apology, the repeat, a cycle that traps millions every year and ends far too many lives. They didn't see one moment of chaos. They saw a long buildup that finally erupted, and from the LGBTQ+ community came a theory rooted in painful history. They saw a young black trans woman trying to love in a world that often punishes women like her just for existing.
They believed her death wasn't just about a relationship. It was about vulnerability, about fear, about the danger so many trans women face, simply navigating love, life, and safety. Was it rage? Was it control? Or was it a moment waiting to explode? Everyone had a theory. Everyone had an opinion. But one truth remained. The world failed her, long before the gun ever did. When a life ends this violently, the silence afterward becomes unbearable. And in that silence, the questions begin. Questions that claw at the heart. Questions that don't have easy answers. Questions that linger long after the crime tape is gone. The first question is the hardest. Why didn't anyone intervene earlier? People saw pieces of the storm, the tension, the fear, the dimming light behind her smile. People felt something was wrong, but no one wanted to believe it was this wrong. No one wanted to imagine she needed saving. And then comes the question that aches even deeper. Why are trans women targeted at such high rates? It is a question America still refuses to face, because facing it means admitting that the danger isn't just one person, but an entire system that leaves women like her unprotected, unheard, and too often unseen. And as the world mourned, another wound opened inside her own family, a wound that should never appear in a moment of grief. Why did a family divide when unity was needed most? It wasn't just pain, it wasn't just confusion, it was a clash between the daughter she was, and the child some refused to acknowledge, a conflict that tore open old beliefs at the very moment she needed peace. And then, the question that left a nation speechless. Why is the funeral itself a battle? She was gone, her life taken, her future stolen. Yet even in death, the world could not agree on how to honor her. A funeral is meant to bring closure, but hers became a mirror, reflecting everything she fought against: misunderstanding, judgment, division. She wasn't just fighting for love, she was fighting to be seen in life and in death. And as the candles melted, and the voices faded, and the headlines moved on, the pain stayed, the questions stayed, the truth stayed. And somewhere in the middle of all that hurt, lies the story of a girl who deserves so much more. Before the headlines, before the arguments, before the tragedy that stole her life, there was a girl who made the world brighter. She crafted beauty with her hands. She transformed wigs into art. She made strangers feel seen, made young fans feel brave, and made people believe in color again, even on their darkest days. That laugh, the one that bounced off phone screens and wrapped itself around millions of hearts, is the sound her fans cling to now. Because in that laugh lived hope, strength, joy, a kind of joy the world couldn't dim. She didn't just influence trends, she influenced courage. Kids who felt different found comfort in her confidence. Women who felt invisible found power in her presence. People who were hurting found a reason to smile in the way she lit up a camera. And even as we revisit her final moments, we do it gently, not to relive the horror, but to honor the girl behind the tragedy. A life this bright shouldn't end this dark, but her story will outlive the silence. This is Detective Daniel Files. If this story moved you, if this life touched you, if you believe her voice deserves to be heard, don't let it end here. Subscribe, comment your name and where you're watching from, and share this story, because silence in cases like this is louder than words.